Listen. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, 2 o'clock here. It is much earlier for you, isn't it, Tali?
It is almost 8 a.m. here. Yeah.
Got you up nice and early.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
You
for
messaged
you
me like
guys.
2 hours ago, though. So
Yeah.
you've been up for like a
Yeah.
while.
I mean, you know this a little more than our chatters do, but I work like really crazy hours like most of the days of the week. I'm working overnight basically. And so yesterday to today is not one of those days, but so my sleep schedule is always still a little messed up. So I wake up throughout the night. Which is sometimes I don't mind it too much. Sometimes I like being like awake before the rest of the world, so I'll just get out of bed at like 4 a.m. or something and take the dogs on a walk and smoke a joint. But no, this morning I enjoyed every minute of sleep that I could get, and I appreciate you pushing it back a little bit for me, as per usual.
Yeah. Yeah. So today, I think, what were we gonna talk about? Well, I saw you on Wick last night.
Yeah, we can start there.
Or yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think I messaged you suggesting we talk about I guess the overall differences in like the left and right disposition, aside from just like the parties and the specific policy, but like maybe more fundamentally on like what has changed and maybe how you think or I think like the world works or is like a workable approach to the politics and like the ideal outcomes that we want, as opposed to just like the tribal left versus right. So like the differences there.
But you're not having so much fun with the tribal left versus right?
I mean, it's fun in that kind of like, I mean, we can keep circling the drain. Potentially, if I were making money off of it, I would be more invested. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm not making money, so
yeah,
it's a little painful.
Yeah, true. It's funny actually. When I was talking to Wick briefly yesterday, this might have been on the stream too. We were talking about, just like the burnout of some of these conversations. And he was saying, he has incentives built in so that he doesn't burn out from this, obviously, which is, yeah, if you're going to make money off of it or if there's something to kind of push you through. But yeah, I think we should talk about that. Hopefully Zero Fucks will show up because he and I had a interesting conversation. I think he's a very smart lad. And he said some smart things in our DMs last night that I think are going to be pertinent to the conversation that you just mentioned, but I'll probably screw them up. So hopefully he'll be in here to chime in when we do get there. But
I know Zero Fucks usually shows up later in the day.
Okay.
I don't know if I see him earlier, but potentially.
That's
I
terrible.
saw you.
He should be prioritizing.
Yeah.
He should be prioritizing our chat at all times.
I
just figure everyone has quit their job so that they can watch us whenever we choose to go live. But whatever. Yeah, I was in voice chat for like several hours after the stream, which was interesting. Yeah, so I went back on Wick's show yesterday. I think like most of our chatters were there, so that was nice. It's funny. I don't know how to feel about it. This is something that I asked Zero Fucks after too. I asked him, like in his opinion, if he thinks it's worth it for me to like engage with Wick's community, basically not with Wick, obviously, but like with Wick's kind of world, his server world. And I was really glad to be chatting with Wick again. I'm really glad that we kind of like buried the hatchet or whatever. That there was like unnecessary tension because it was premised off of a misunderstanding on both of our parts. So I'm glad that we got past that.
Yeah.
I like talking to Wick. So I had fun. Like I had fun on the stream.
Okay.
And people are really deranged, like really,
Mhm.
really deranged.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm like, I'm reticent to even have this next part of the conversation because I feel like I'm just whining.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess whatever, maybe I'll just whine. Like I can't tell how much of their like pretty atrocious behavior directed
Yeah.
towards me is again just like a me problem that I need to not be sensitive, and it's part of the territory of talking
Yeah.
online, which is this is true too, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
also like I do think it just also ties into the conversations that we've been having here about
Yeah.
tribalism
For sure.
and polarization and stuff. And yeah, I mean it's I had like there's this one girl in the chat who kept reiterating over and over again, and I found it kind of funny. Like I don't think it's a real death threat, but she just kept saying that she's like wishing that Iranian missiles were going to land on my location, like
Mhm.
saying that I was the
Yeah.
target for the next Iranian ballistic missile. Just weird fucking stuff, man. And
Yeah,
then
man.
like
That was in the VC after.
no, this was just in
That was
Wick's
in
chat
Wix
during the
during the
stream.
okay, because I
During the
was there
stream.
during the stream. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then in the VC after, like, there's this one guy who I guess is like a head mod on Wix server. I don't talk on Discord and servers. Like I
Yeah.
DM. I don't really participate in some very occasionally I do. Very, very occasionally. If I just happen to see something, whatever, and it's interesting to me. Or sometimes I'll like share a pet picture in like,
Yeah.
one of those channels. But yeah, I don't know. This dude just like lost it on me. Like
Mhm.
cursing, just like calling me like whatever, all the words, but just like screaming at me that I'm so
Yeah.
annoying and I'm so stupid and this and that. And I don't know. Yeah, it's like it's deranging. And I'm like, part of me is like, I definitely want to go back and talk to Wick again. I like talking to Wick, like and
Yeah.
whatever. And I like that our conversations can get a little bit contentious, and still respectful. But yeah, I don't know, man. People are so fucking crazy. And again, it makes it's a bizarre thing to talk about because I'm talking about myself, right? So I have to like separate it on a certain level. But I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it seems like a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I was in the
What were your
chat last
thoughts?
night.
Yeah.
I've been like kind of wrestling with like, should I tell you how I really feel, like type of thing,
Yes.
or should I like?
Okay, you should always tell me how you really feel.
I know, but then I wrestle with like, okay, as a friend and as somebody who like I know and I speak to, I have like one opinion, and as somebody like if you're going to make content and like these are choices you're making for content, then it's like a different opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Give me
And I'm
give me
gonna
both of them.
preface this with like, I am strange and I am weird and a bit autistic and maybe I read people wrong. But like it just seemed like I just don't like how Wick talks to you. And I'm just gonna say, like, I like Wick. I think he's like a decent human being. I don't agree with him on all things. But like I like the fact that he like, will hold two sides of arguments, and I think he's like trying to do good in the world. I don't think he's like
legitimately open-minded in a way that a lot of other people aren't. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think he's like a bad actor or malevolent or any of those things. But I just think, and you and I are different. So it could be like that the nature of the friendship and relationship you guys have, that he can speak to you that way and it doesn't bother you. But there is just something like a little bit like condescending in it that just rubbed me the wrong way. And maybe
Are you talking mostly about the part where, because I saw you chime in the chat. What's coming up for me is when he was basically telling me like, yes, Zero Fucks is here. God bless. Okay, I'm going to be invoking your name many times. But also thank God the rest of you are here. I love you all equally. But Zero Fucks said something really insightful in my DMs last night that I want to be able to talk about today. But yeah, the where he was telling me essentially that he like, I need to get like that my entire worldview is based off being bullied, basically, and I need to I need to come to terms with that and get over it. And I saw you chime in. It was just like, why are you saying that her analysis of her positions are not accurate? Like, we're, you know,
yeah, like, why is it baked into the cake that you're automatically wrong? There was that, but like, I think a little bit before, there were like a few times that it seemed like he was like trying to bait you into an argument with him over like petty things, or like things that have discussions that have happened over the last few months, but in a way that just came across as like, I don't know, like disingenuous or insincere. And I would have to go back and find the very specific things.
right.
But that was what I was noticing. And I was just like, I don't know why. And I think the way callers came in, like so overtly hostile without any bounds of like, okay, if you're here and this is my show and like you're a guest or a co, however it is, like there's a floor for the amount, like the way you can treat somebody.
Right.
If you go below that floor, like that's not cool, you know. And this doesn't mean that everyone has to be polite, right? But like the boundless hostility, I don't know. I tend to see when people go on shows like that, there's a little bit of like, shut the fuck up, or I'm going to kick you, or I'm going to boot you if you're like too unhinged, and or a little bit of pushback, as opposed to like maybe somewhat siding with the unhinged position. And so those are just things that bug me, but like on a personal level. But like then as like a content creator, if these are the places you want to put yourself in and the types of arguments you want to have, then that's a choice. And I don't presume to know like what's best for you to become more rhetorically like skilled and to put your message and your thoughts out and the type of voices you want to speak to. So like on one hand, I'm like, but on the other hand, I'm like, well, this is a choice. You're a big girl. You can make your own decisions. And I'm not going to like do anything. I was thinking about like calling in, but I was like, no, I'm gonna let her just like, you know, fend for yourself. And I don't want to like, it was just so like, the balance was so off. And
totally. Well, and that's the thing too. I'm going to touch on both of those. So on the one hand, with him like potentially you know, the temperature of the call-ins, I should say. I agree with you. Like everyone just came in like really hot, but also I think in Wick's defense, or really just generally speaking, that's kind of how Wick's show goes, you know. And even like he'll do call-ins of just people to come and yell at him, and people really do come in and scream and they go crazy. And that's like maybe part of the shtick of Wick's show too. And people know they can, you know, they can just like call in and pretty much say anything. So I'm not even like, even that is like whatever. Like that doesn't really bother me. But just so speaking of the hostility, after the stream, so I'm in like voice whatever, and Wick's chat goes pretty quickly, like in his server. A lot of people are active in it, basically. So the general chat, I get a notification that says like someone says something Tali. I don't know if they're talking to me or about me, right? But so I click into general chat, and it's already like scrolled past the person who said my name. So I type into the search function in general chat, and I type in Tali. And just in the last like 10 hours in the chat, the results that came up for my name, I was like, holy shit. Like these people despise me. And the irony of it too is like, I mean, and this is, again, this is not special to me. This is how like the internet works and like lore works. But like half of the people in there were literally saying like, so wait, like, why do we hate Tali? Like, can someone catch me up on the Tali lore, you know? And so like, but even the people who had never seen me speak before and had never interacted with me were like jumping on the bandwagon. And again, it's like, it's me. So I'm going to be more offended by it than if I saw them. Although I think I would be pretty disgusted if I saw them speaking that way about you or about Hutch, you know, like, or about like really anyone that I have like respect for. But I was just like, damn. And then, so then it is weird, right? And I'm just like, you know, again, I want to go back on Wick's show. I like Wick. I like talking to Wick. I just do. And I don't want to, the irony too is like in me and Wick's conversation, we were talking about media echo chambers essentially, and like social echo chambers, and like I don't want to be in one, you know. And so like I do want to be engaging with, you know, people with different ideas. I wish the people on the left, whatever, on the other side of this political divide in this internet sphere, were interested in having conversations that weren't just duels, basically, you know, that weren't just like a fight to get someone to repent, essentially. That's what I feel like it was. Not necessarily by Wick, you know, a little bit. I think like Wick does want me, wishes that I would change my perspective, but yeah, I don't know. It was just like I was really taken aback by how hostile when I typed in my name in the fucking chat.
Yeah, and I think that that's like partially because like I have spoken to you and I've heard you like speak on Wick before. I mean, like that's how like I became more like familiar with you, right? And the idea that like you're like a malicious actor, do you know what I mean? Like just like that wants bad things. Okay, like I've said, you could be wrong and you could have a bad assessment, and these people could
be spectacularly
all of those things, but like you're not I don't know, like you're not somebody who's like wanting great harm in the world. And so I feel like some of the criticisms become like they're like unmoored from like what is actual and what is true. You know what I mean? They're like character assassinations instead of like attacking like the position or the argument. And like this is the same thing. They'll say the same thing about like Ryan, who I think he could be wrong too, but he makes a case for what he sees. He gives an analysis and why he sees it, and like literally like how he sees something working.
They're so mad that Ryan is smart.
Yes.
They are so mad that Ryan, and you know, like he said this before, and not that I like ever doubted that was the reason. I think we had this conversation maybe last week or the week before or something. But like, you know, Ryan's perception of why these people basically despise him, right, is that he's competent, that he's a traitor in that way, and that he's very competent. And not that I didn't agree with that. I obviously think Ryan is competent, but yesterday's conversation just about Ryan like really cemented that for me. Like, oh yeah, no, they hate him because he's smart. Because I was watching his conversation, you know, after the stream. I caught up on his conversation with Connor from yesterday because I was sleeping while they were talking before the stream, before my Wick stream. And it's like, God, Ryan is so good, man. Like, again, even if you like disagree with it, like he's ready, like he's prepared. He is a learned man, and that's why they hate it. And I actually changed my Discord profile picture to a picture of me and Ryan just to troll at this point.
Yeah.
But I was really taken aback, even just like how at Wick's perception of Ryan. And I know Wick likes Ryan well enough too, and whatever, and they don't have bad blood. And Ryan's going to be on Wick's show tomorrow or in 2 days or something. 2 days, I think, on Thursday. But yeah, like when I'm saying how like my media diet actually changed, you know, and like and they don't need to like believe me, but leading up to the election, I was watching the Megyn Kelly show every single day, and Megyn Kelly came out like she changed her position on her show from like sort of being a nonpartisan observer to she talked about her decision on the show of deciding to campaign for the Trump administration. She was a surrogate for the Trump administration. I don't watch her at all now. I like occasionally watch Ben Shapiro's show. I don't catch it every day.
Yeah.
And then I watch like the liberal creators on YouTube, you know, like, and I listen to like the Fifth Column. Those guys are all anti-Trump, you know, like I listened like I just, so the idea that my like crazy MAGA right-wing media diet is Ryan Mullally, like that is, it's just demented. And I think kind of along the lines of what you were saying too, it's like, yeah, obviously I don't think I'm a bad person. So I think that their responses to me are crazy, but it reminds me also of the fight that Dev has been in on Twitter the last like week, where I'll get into the details of that in a second if you don't know what I'm talking about. But
Okay.
essentially, he's getting into a fight with the trans activists on Twitter. And he made the point that I've made 100 times. And it was hard for me to not do an I told you so to him, because he and I have had a conversation
Mhm.
about what trans people believe basically before.
Yeah.
And because he makes the point that trans people don't believe they can change sex. They don't care if you see them as men. They just want to be left alone. And I said,
Fucking bullshit.
no, a lot of them really do care, right? And I was like,
Yes.
and I told him in DMs, I was like, my point of saying they really do care is not like, oh, look how delusional they are. My point is, look how much we failed these people. Like, we have really failed to communicate this experience and to prioritize, all of these things, whatever. But anyway, sorry, that was a tangent to say that Dev's conclusion in this fight that he's having with the trans activists, because now they're calling him a bigot and and all of these things. And Dev is not only an ally, he's a chaser. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I know that weirds some trans women out, but like, he's so not a bigot. Like, he'll invite you into his bed. Again, I'm not even trying to make it gross, but like, my point being, he's obviously not a fucking anti-trans bigot. You know what I mean? And he was saying to them, like, if I'm your enemy, like, you guys are fucked. And that's kind of how I feel about the people in like Wick server. Like, if I'm the devil, then we're all fucked.
done.
Like, then I don't know what to tell you. And it's
Yeah, we're all
similar how
fucked, though.
I felt. Yeah, it's
We're all
similar how I
fucked, though.
felt. It's similar how I felt in Kalinda's chat when they were like going off on me last week or whenever this was. I'm just like, again, first of all, it just hurts interpersonally because I'm like, this is a space that I like hang out in. I'm not a co-host, whatever. I'm just like a chatter. I hang out in this space. And also, yeah, like and obviously I don't think I'm crazy, but if I'm the fucking craziest, if I'm the avatar for like the evil right-wing bigot, whatever, then you guys are so fucking fucked.
Yeah. I kind of think that they're so fucking fucked right now. Like,
they use the friend-enemy distinction with no calibration.
No. With no calibration. And yeah, I mean, and this is like what drove people out of like leftist and like more progressive spaces before. And then it seemed to like chill for a bit. And now it's like, I don't know. I don't know if they see the time horizon for Trump like shrinking and like other things happening and, potentially, having power again, and all of these things are, kind of swirling around. And the overall discussions in these spaces of like, well, how do we punish, or how do we make sure it never happens again? Even though I'm not sure that you can it's the nature of democracy. And like, I don't know, you can't force accountability. Accountability is something that like a person decides to do. If you enforce accountability, that's punishment. You cannot force accountability. Somebody has to take
semantic this is a semantic argument that I've had with myself a million times that I've never like verbalized, but it's completely what you're saying. You can hold people responsible. You can, what I mean? You can determine that they are responsible for something. Accountability is an internal thing, correct? Someone needs to take accountability. That is just how this works. And then also on your point of like, we can't prevent this from happening again. Exactly. And I think it was Hutch who said something like that. Maybe it was the Storm Wolf or whatever guy, the like skinny brown guy that was on that panel too. Who said that? Like, we can't, first of all, some of the people arguing how do we prevent this from happening again are explicitly saying how do we prevent Republicans from taking power again. So they don't even just mean a Trump-like figure. They mean Republicans. They literally want one party control of the country. But even if they meant a Trump-like figure, that's correct. You can't. Like, there is no way without making it less democratic, essentially, right?
Yeah.
There is no way to do that. And also, like, just like people can change, and you can elect someone on something, and they could turn out to govern very differently and whatever. But to Hutch's point, and all these people, you make reforms, and you know what I mean. You try when someone does something bad, you account for that moving forward. Even that was Hutch's point too, with like people who want to like arrest the entire cabinet. It's like, well, no, if they committed crimes while doing their job, right, that were unrelated to the duties of their job, or rather, if they committed crimes you can prosecute for that. But if you don't like
Yeah.
the way they did things that they were legally allowed to do, then you need to change moving forward. You change the powers that they're
Yes.
able to have or whatever, right? Constitutionally or in the legislature. But no, you can't just decide that it was wrong now and then retroactively apply that law to someone who served previously. But yeah, so that's just demented. And then, sorry, one thing before I forget that I find interesting too is Grassroots wrote in the chat, Connor's chat fucking hates Ryan, but they like me and we overlap like 95 out of 100. That's kind of how I feel about you and me, Kay. And granted, it could be just be because like I go on these shows and speak more.
Yeah.
Also, you are much more well spoken. Like you're more thoughtful. You're more careful,
Right.
maybe. I don't know the exact word, but I think you're like I spit out a lot of nonsense with maybe like some interesting things. I feel like you're more like circumspect with your thoughts, which I very much appreciate. But that's how I feel about you and me. It's like you and me will be in these chats where like I'll get harassed. And I'm just like in my mind, I'm like, Kay is a moderator here, you know, and like I know that Kay and I share again like 95 out of 100 beliefs. So it is interesting how they choose to direct their ire, but maybe it really does just have to do with like who's the person up there that they can like we become the avatar when we put our face up front as opposed to chatting. Maybe.
Yeah. I think that there's probably something to that. Like a lot of these people, maybe they've like heard you speak before. They didn't like your positions. They know you voted for Trump, and that like colors everything that they've seen. Whereas, you know, I'm Canadian, so I didn't vote. And even if I would have or had support, like I think it means less. And I just haven't been, you know, like in speaking. People haven't heard me
Right.
like pin me down on like certain positions. And I don't know if I'm well spoken. I try very hard to like be accurate with my speech, to say what I mean what I say, kind of thing. But it results in like, I don't know, kind of taking less firm positions on things than I would like to be able to, or maybe that I really feel. But like I really try to like calibrate my, you know, like my certainty on things, because that's like something that fucking bugs me.
Yes.
So much. But you know, but that's not, it's not great for this world, you know. So yeah, I'm very acutely aware of that, you know.
No, but it is healthy to calibrate your certainty, really. But yeah, no, I mean, and I think I've said this on our streams before, but before you and I ever started like streaming together, and we would just DM, you would like watch me on stream and you would like message me like a suggestion of like how I might frame like an argument that I made. And every time I'm like, genius, you put it so well. And then I never take your advice because I can't, in the moment, I just like can't be prepared in that way.
No,
you know, I just end up just rattling off. But yeah, so I do think I do think you are very effective in communicating, and that's obviously a huge bonus. And it's good, especially if you're going to be in this position of like, you're almost a translator of sorts, right? Because you come from one side, but you lean more on the other side, but you still firmly have your footing, you know, in the side from which you came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As time goes on, I think that it's important for me to like, as much as I can, to try to like not take sides, and because then it's easier to be intellectually honest if I'm not like deeply in a camp, and because I don't have to like take part in your like electoral system, I can do that, even if I have like more sway, or like more like swaying one side to another.
Feelings
it's easier to
about
like
it.
stay like a little bit like ideologically detached, or kind of like looking from up high. And because it becomes really hard, because even when I was on the left, I was like, I'm here in Canada, I'm on the left, but like I also want left things like in the United States as well, because like your culture and the things that happen there inform,
because you're a dirty
kind of like
globalist.
and it informs on like what the norms are here, and
certainly
these things all kind of like fall into each other, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, but I don't know. Yes, the chat was unhinged. The messaging, like some of it was like wild. It was great to see you back on like Wick though. And yes, they get very mad at Ryan because Ryan's effective and like well prepared and well thought out. And I also
Yeah.
messaged Ryan like wait when he started talking like similar things, just like you need to this would be good or this would be I'm like
Right.
I've done them with a few people only because I'm like, oh, I know you guys can be effective. And if I'm like sitting here yelling at the computer, like, no, this is the point you need to make, then,
Right.
you know, there's somebody else who, you know what I
Yes.
mean, who it can sway.
Yeah.
But Connor's discussion with Ryan yesterday, did you end up finishing that?
I didn't finish it, but I got to like they must have ended like 1 minute after because I heard all the way to the point where like they had 4 minutes left, like Connor had to go leave to pick up his kid. So I didn't listen to the whole thing and I didn't hear any of Ryan's like review after, but I heard
Okay.
if not the entire conversation, everything but like 2 minutes of their conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
That was an
So
incredible conversation. Ryan
yeah, at the
handled that, I
end,
think, just deliciously.
yeah. Yeah, so I
I'm
guess like
gonna
towards the end,
grab a
it
Diet
was
Coke. I'll
yeah.
BRB, but I can hear you, so please continue.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah, so Ryan and Connor were talking yesterday afternoon, and I think like towards the end of the conversation, Ryan was making the argument that like Connor isn't a Republican or isn't a conservative, that he's essentially somebody who's like a progressive, but maybe a more conservative progressive or a conservative Democrat because he accepts the framing and the belief and is okay with certain types of I don't want to say progresses, but certain types of like maybe judicial and legal encroachments from like the judiciary as opposed to like doing it like through Congress. Yeah.
Well, and I think even on the more, I don't know if it's macro or micro in this case level, like the part of their conversation about voluntarism was fascinating too and really interesting, right? And I think also speaks to this sort of difference in disposition potentially. But yeah, no, it was a really fascinating conversation. And again, I'm sure I know like Connor doesn't want to be called a progressive and they were using different definitions of the term.
Yeah.
But I think Ryan made a pretty good case that's what Connor is advocating for, a paternalistic, socially conservative progressivism, right? Where we change the structure of how things work in a way that is contrary to the founders and the founding documents, right? But not in a free sex and free transition way, right? But rather in it's like you're going to have to take care of your family, and so we're going to sign you up for the, and in understandable ways. And there are like certain things where I like relate to that impulse that Connor has in terms of like, it feels like there are some decisions that are so bad that like, why wouldn't we take them away from people? But in reality, I don't actually really believe that. And I did at some point when I was still kind of working out my worldview, leaving the left and whatever. I became a little more authoritarian on some things, or paternalistic, really, I guess. But I've moved back from that significantly. And like, again, like the only really like choice I'm trying to take away from anyone is medical transition for children, like that's that. And I think we've already all agreed and, society has acknowledged that children have different barriers than adults in accessing different services.
Well, regarding with the whole Social Security thing, I think like I understand like both sides of the coin, but like we aren't living in like a blank slate where we could apply one or the other. We're living in a world where like Social Security exists as it is, and people have learned like to function in a certain way, like, but not having to do that. like putting their own money aside to take it out, and it's just going out of your paycheck, right? And then it's coming back when you're older. You don't have to like set that up. It's done automatically. And so like there's a system and a reliance that has been created and has been going on for a long time. And I think if we wanted to move to something that it was like more elective, you need like a bridging mechanism and to teach people and to show people how to do that. Because we don't live in like the blank slate where we say, okay, we're going to do this, or okay, we're going to keep it like that. Like it might be that Ryan's way to do it is better, but like applying it to the world as the country as the country is would be disastrous without doing it like, you know what I mean, in a way that gave people a chance to see why, or to see like how to make that function.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I think
so it's like you have to contend with like the reality of where people like where we are, you know.
This is true, but I also think like there's something very powerful in allowing people to rise to the occasion. And no, not everyone will rise to the occasion, but you know, therein it lies like human diversity, right? And I think like I agree with you in part, at least, probably even more. I'm just, you know, pushing back. I'm sure you're going to agree with a lot of the pushback, but like I think Connor's rebuttal to Ryan talking about the Trump accounts, essentially those like the child accounts, I thought his rebuttal was incredibly weak. You know, it essentially was like, well, most people don't know about it, and then like if they do know about it, like they're gonna have to go on to like a shitty website, and it's like, okay, first of all, yeah, no one knows about it. It just started a couple of months ago. You know, like no one knew about, in theory, right? No one knew about Obamacare and stuff like that. You do raise the profile of these services, right? And in the same way that when I would, you know, go into a store that had a TV playing, I would see Kristi Noem's face and her modeling and doing an ad for what's it called? For ice and stuff like that. There can and should be ads going on about these, you know, Trump child accounts. And again, the idea that like, oh, but they're not going to want to go onto this website. Well, I'm sorry. I have no sympathy for that, in the same way that I don't have sympathy for the arguments against voter ID. Like, first of all, most people can do this, especially if it's in their interests. And we already have services available to help the people who can't. This is where I get so frustrated too with the ID thing, because I worked in homeless services. Basically, I worked with severely mentally ill homeless people. And they can't, a lot of people really can't do anything for themselves. So you know what we do? The government pays for all of their IDs and all of the forms and everything like that, so they don't have to pay for it. There are services that will pay for this for anyone who needs it. And I would literally drive people to the state offices, and I would sit there with them in line, and I would help them fill out their paperwork, and then the IDs would get delivered to us, and we would go out and find them on the street and give them their stuff. Like that, and those services aren't going away. You know what I mean? Like, so we already do have like, so there is so much help available. And I think Ryan's rebuttal was just so beautiful too, because it was the rhetorical flourish. Like, oh, well, maybe they're too dumb to do this. And if they're too dumb to do this, well, then maybe they're too dumb to, and you know, we can't even trust that they're going to read the book. So I thought that was just like, just beautiful. I thought like, it was just cinematic stuff. I thought Ryan did really excellent in that conversation. But yeah, I think it's like and that to me was just an anti-Trump argument sort of at its core. It was just like but people don't like Trump, so we don't want to use the Trump thing. And Connor didn't say that. And I don't know that that's necessarily what Connor meant, but it did feel like, it's like, why would you be against this program? You know, like that is just silly.
Yeah, no, there's no good reason to not use it if it's there. And, you know, I don't know exactly what it does, but yeah, no, I don't have any necessarily problem with that. And just like, and I'm sure Ryan wouldn't advocate for like tomorrow, like turning the switch off of like Social Security and implementing it the way he wants to. Like he's like reasonable person who would be like, well, that could be just like, that would probably be disastrous. We need to like unroll it in a certain way. And all I'm saying is that like, however you unroll it, like it would need to be happen in stages and progressively to let
Definitely.
people catch up and to figure out what would happen with like people who paid into Social Security now. And what about the people who's like the people who might get caught in like a gap or whatever. So it's just, and I think when you talk about maybe like a little bit of more of like, well, there are different possibilities on like we're here and we want to get to here. It's like, okay, but there are some stages and these stages could look like this or they could look like that. I think it's a little bit easier to sell to people when you're like maybe kind of like handling some of the concerns that they have, you know. And maybe
Mhm.
there's a thing that like you have to opt into it, but you can opt into it with the government and then they'll take it out of your check. And if you want to opt out of it, maybe it'll be a little bit more difficult. So you could protect your own self. But if you don't want to, there's a way to undo it. So you're not being forced into like
Mhm.
a system overall that doesn't work for you. There could be, you know what I mean? Variations on things. So it's a voluntary program, but still maybe a little bit of friction. So people, you know what I mean, aren't
Yeah. I also think
like, yeah.
Yeah. No, sorry. I agree completely. And anything like that would need to be phased out and phased in. And that's an
Mhm.
interesting, even just what you just said right there is very interesting. Like, okay, you still make it voluntary, but the sign up is automatic. And to cancel it, right? If we're assuming that being part of the program is most beneficial to the person in a paternalistic
Mhm.
way, right? This is the smartest
Yeah.
route to take. Then yeah, you allow them to opt out, but maybe opting out requires them going into the DMV, you know, whatever, and submitting their paperwork or
Yeah.
something. So you make a little more of a barrier to opting out, but you still allow people. But even like, and I'm not trying to shit on Connor, and maybe I am just like, I mean, I'm not rich, but like maybe I'm just like so disconnected from like what poor people are dealing with. Although I don't
Mhm.
necessarily know that we're talking about like the poorest of the poor here
Mhm.
anyway. But like, I just didn't find Connor's argument very credible that like all of that most people 90% of people basically are going to choose to keep the $50 in their paycheck because they're using 99% of that for food. That
Yeah.
the math isn't mathing to me. And again, this to me just felt like what the left does, which is it's just like this is going to be very loaded, but like it's just like it's a little bit histrionic, you know. It feels like the
Yeah.
same thing that they do when talking about voter ID laws, you know. And it's like, but then like, you know, no black people are going to be able to vote. It's like, first of all, again, that just, I know the left doesn't like, the left has like uh has clued in to this talking point essentially from the right that like it's literally it's a racist fucking assumption to assume that black people aren't going to be able to get IDs, right?
Yes.
um but like, yeah, I think like they do the same thing, right? It's like, oh, the people are gonna have to go to the DMV, and then most people aren't gonna be able to get it, and it's like, I don't think that's rooted in reality,
No.
really, you know. And then again,
No.
it's like, okay, so then maybe you make it so that the IDs are automatically sent out, right? When you
Yeah.
are like a registered citizen, right, a verified citizen,
Mhm.
naturalized or born or whatever, that the ID is automatically implemented and sent out to you and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah,
it
as
feels
long
like
as like
they
your state ID, you have a state ID, and one of the valid forms of a state ID that you could acquire for free or a voter ID, however you want to do it, you know what I mean? That you can get it without having to like incur costs, and that could be taken care of by the state. There should be no reason to to like have an issue with voter ID. You know, if voter ID requires you to have to go and pay money for something, like then like I wouldn't necessarily be for that, but there are ways around that you can get state issued ID,
yes.
and that could be taken care of, and you could do it. It doesn't have to be, you know, in a few months. You could do it for the next like in 2028, and you have years to roll it
Mhm.
out and figure out how to do it. It just seems like a reactionary no. Well,
Yeah.
the conservatives want this and I don't like that, so there's something baked in it that's bad for me, so I'm going to oppose it because because if they want it, that it has to be to my detriment.
Yeah. Also, this just
Yeah.
occurred to me, and I know this isn't the case everywhere, because like where I grew up, for example, my voting location was at the middle school, and to register to vote, although actually you would register to vote at the middle school too, but not to get an ID. But where I live now in Hawaii, the DMV essentially that I go to is my voting location. So like the idea that someone like wouldn't be able to make it to that building on a day to apply for a driver's license or a state issued ID, but they can show up to that same building on another day to vote, like there's just even an inconsistency there, And I just remember I was in Kalinda's chat. They were talking about voter ID, and obviously they're all against it, just reflexively all against it. And they're talking about I was arguing in favor of voter ID, and they're like, but again, they make it intentionally difficult and excludes all these people. And this person's like, yeah, in Texas, Georgia, and I think they said Illinois, I don't know, like some other state. Like you need a passport to vote. Like you can't even use a state ID. So I just like did a quick Google search, and on the Texas like government website, right? You can use like one of 5 forms of ID.
Yeah.
A Texas state ID being one of them, a gun license being another. Like it was just not true. They also just like believe lies, no, in Texas, you do not need to have a federally issued passport to vote. That's just not true. And it is so easily verifiable. But they just like, they just like reinforce each other. And it just like can't, it is this like bizarre conversation, even though not every like every liberal chatter in one of these spaces is like the elite, but it is this idea of like all these like relatively high functioning people, like imagining what low functioning and poor people do and like how they live and, like what they have access to. I think
like during that, I think I was there for part of that conversation, and I think I messaged you after, and I was like, I think you said to me, yes, like reactionary leftism or something to that effect. And that's what I get frustrated with. I think sometimes when I'm in any space, Linda's chat or anywhere, and it's like just the reactionary leftist take or view on things comes without any thought. And then it's like, as soon as it gets a little bit explored, it's like, okay, well, maybe not quite. Maybe that's not all bad. Maybe there's not a great, like the idea. I don't know, like voter ID. But is
even when
it's like, I don't even understand.
But even when I've done
argument against needing.
No, but do you want to hear what their bottom line argument is? Because I've done the back and forth, of like, well, actually this, right? And then whatever. And when I've gotten past all of the like, well, there are going to be services available for people to get it in this case or whatever, and you can have them mailed directly to people's homes. Like even once we go down that whole line, their end position was, well, we have extremely low rates of voter fraud in this country. So I don't think we should be solving a problem that doesn't exist. So even when we can get through all of the like how this might hold back certain specific groups or target, even when we get past all of that, their position is, well, this is a canard invented by the right wing who likes to pretend that we have major voter fraud issues. And I think that's like there's truth to that. Like the right overblows the occurrence of voter fraud. But again, like to me that's not compelling either. Like, well, no, it's not being severely abused now, so we shouldn't try to fix it until it maybe one day would be severely abused, And it's like, even if I could understand that argument, which I don't have a lot of sympathy for that argument, like okay, sure, maybe there wasn't so much of a reason to do it, but like we're just like in a new age, we're in a new technological age where there are more vulnerabilities to our voting system, especially because it is so decentralized. So I just think, right, even when we get past all the nitty gritty, it's just, well, this isn't a real problem, so I won't engage with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems, why would you ever like then what's the argument for like photo ID anywhere ever?
Well, and that was the thing too. And I was saying in the chat, I was like,
But
guys,
no,
you
but like, what
need
would be
ID
the
to
argument
get a
for photo
job.
ID ever for anything ever? Then
Anything ever.
like if voting, if there's not a lot of fraud on it, and I don't know, but you wouldn't want to do anything to prevent it, then why would the government need photo ID for anything?
Ever.
Why couldn't your driver's license not have? I don't know.
Right. Or why did we ever add a photo, right? Because they used to not have photos.
The person like couldn't be trusted to just give their name, and that would be who they were. Like if we can trust people on the honor system like that for, I suppose, one of their greatest what do you want to say? Oh my God, the word. When you get one of your greatest responsibilities, I suppose, or one of your, that your democracy gives you.
Right.
Why would you ever, like, if you wouldn't want to ensure that the people are the people, like why would you want it like why would it be important anywhere else? That it just kind of like,
well, and I was making the point in the chat. I was like, guys, you literally need a form of photo ID to get a job, like to be employed. And then they're like,
yeah,
you shouldn't have to be employed to vote. And I'm like, okay, that's not the point I'm trying to make. Obviously, no. If someone is like experiencing unemployment, they should still be eligible to vote in November,
yes.
right? My point is, you need ID to function in our society. That already is the case. Like, and it's like, so what you're talking about, like the small, tiny minority of people who like aren't even applying for jobs because they don't have an ID and have never cared to get one. And again, I'm sorry, but I do have less sympathy for it because I know that there are services available to get people IDs. Like that was literally part of my job requirement when I was working with these homeless services, was we would get people IDs. In fact, the different departments in the like the government offices, basically, they would they would block out like appointment times essentially to make sure that the people who were servicing the severely drug addicted and homeless and mentally ill people could get them in and get IDs. Like they're just we just do have all of these services, and no one's arguing or I'm not arguing at least to get rid of these services, although I have a huge issue with homeless services and just the way that we've conceptualized trying to like treat this issue in society. But yeah, I don't know, just pisses, like if you need an ID to fill out your tax paperwork, to get a job, to be gainfully employed, to be a member of our society. And no, actually, I don't want to create all of our rules and protocols and policies around the least functional people in our society. And that was also kind of a point that Connor was making, like, so you'd be okay with like, Connor was calling them dumb, so I'll just say on that, you'd be okay with all of these like super dumb and incompetent people like just having to like kind of fend for themselves, or like not succeeding. And it's like, yeah, if those are my options, then yeah. I don't want a whole bunch of people to, like to suffer. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't help those people and whatever, but yes, if that's going to allow productive people to thrive more and succeed more and all of these things and contribute more, then yes.
Yes, and there's something to be said of like, are these people dumb or are they just allowed to be dumb because they don't have because they don't have to function? Do you know what I mean? Because they don't have to figure things out. And there's something good about like, demanding of people, as long as you still carve out, some stuff for people in society who truly can't function. But most people can figure these things out. And yes, with the money, with the social security stuff, it would probably, if people were getting better returns on it and people saw that they were getting better returns on like their social security, if they were doing like a sovereign wealth fund or whatever, how Ryan was explaining it, then people would be more incentivized to put money into it. And like that you would see people doing well at the later stages of their lives, and you would understand like where that came from, as opposed to now where social security is like very meager and you still need to have your own retirement to like round out your ability to survive. So as time goes on and these things happen, like it's hard to say all of the change that it would encompass and how that would impact people's decision making.
Well, and also like they ended up having a debate, or part of their conversation went into this idea of like sort of like individualism versus collectivism, although it wasn't quite collectivism as they like hammered it out really. But what was like missing from part of that I know is part of Ryan's framework, and part of Connor's framework too, frankly, if I really had to guess. Although again, Connor has moved left. That's just kind of not really objectionable at this point. But is like the family component too, right? Because Connor's saying like, so you want like grandpa essentially to like be out on his ass, where Connor's like, at least I want grandpa to be able to afford a tiny apartment with cat food to eat, right? He kept like reusing that line, and it's a funny line, but he's basically saying that we should give people like just Connor's ideas. Like we should be getting people this just enough to live in squalor, right? And it's like, okay, why are the two options grandpa dies or he eats cat food alone in an apartment? Like we have, this is something that, I appreciate more living in Hawaii, where there really are many more like multi-family homes. And I know that's not for everyone and it's not that simple, but like old people don't just need like money to eat. They also need more help and more care. Right. And so it's families, ideally are taking care of their elders. And I know not everyone can, and it's not that simple, but again, it's like that can and should be part of the conversation, and religious organizations and charities and stuff, that can support people who need more support, like the elderly. There is almost something, again, Connor was like fighting the individualism of Ryan's argument, but there's almost something individualistic in a twisted way about like, but we need to make sure that grandpa can live on his own and eat cat food, and it's like, well, no, maybe if grandpa stops making all that money, right, and he's got some money, whatever, coming in Social Security or something, and that money helps go to the house, and grandpa moves in, to the baby's room because the baby's grown up now, and again, I know it's not that simple for every family. I really do understand that. But like, I feel like that component was like left out of the conversation too.
Yeah. It's just a whole like society problem in general. Like, it always like comes back to, for me, it comes back to like, a few things that like we're functioning in a world that like has very low social cohesion and low trust. And like, in order for things to start getting better, like I think that we have to at least increase social cohesion and like start increasing trust in various ways, for people to buy into the structures and the institutions that are there, that are already in place, but maybe fractured, but to you know what I mean, to come up and like help build things back up a little. But like, I think in order to even get there first,
you need buy-in from both sides. They need to believe that their countrymen are fighting for the same thing, right? Even if they want to go about it in different ways. Yeah, totally. And not to make this about me again, but I'm the queen of doing that. And this is like a silly comparison, but just sort of along the lines of the beginning of our conversation of like me being in Wix, doing Wix Stream again, and his chat's hostility, and me asking zero fucks, like, do you think it's worth it for me to even be engaging with this community? That is like part of my motivation too, is to heal our social cohesion in some way. And I think what is most dismaying for me, and again, like the whole thing is just bizarre because I'm talking about myself. I wish I was talking about some other like third person figure here, just so it would, whatever, maybe be easier to analyze and I'd be less self-involved in this case. But like, and of course we all think that we're the most reasonable person, but like, I really should be someone that can help bridge the gap in the same way that you should be and that Ryan should be, because we are
Mhm.
all still dispositionally liberal people. We come
Mhm.
from that side, so we have sympathy and we don't see them as the enemy and all of these things. Yeah, it's like I want to just. So it is a social component too, which I think people don't like, right? And people make comments about that, like whatever. But yeah, like I do want us to all be able to get along, and we should be like, doing that in practice. And that is something that I really
Yeah.
appreciated about Wix Space. And I do think it has changed a little bit, and for understandable reasons. Like things are more polarized right now within the country, so everyone is kind of tucking back into their camps a little bit, right? There's like a little bit less
Yeah.
generosity of spirit, I think, to like reach across the aisle. But I completely agree. Like the social cohesion, the negative polarization in our society,
Yeah.
in America, but it's not just America, right? This
No,
is
no. Mhm.
the Anglosphere kind of functions as a single
Yeah.
unit, right? Because we are all sharing the same media and entertainment and all of this stuff. But yeah, like it is kind of a problem if you guys can't have a normal, friendly conversation with a Republican who is like not so far from you. Even if like
Yeah.
some of our policies would be far away. Like I guess that's the thing too.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like
And a Republican or a conservative who's not trying to like shit on you. It's like I understand where you're coming from. I just see it differently. I'm not even gonna try and convince you of my position. Like I can just hear you talk and you can hear me talk, and like there's no like I have no agenda to pull you to my side type of thing,
yeah.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, so I can see from your perspective of wanting to do that or wanting to be able to do that and then going into a space and getting like the exact opposite or
Right.
triggering the opposite in people would be like super fucking frustrating and like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
you
it
mentioned
is.
zero fucks, so you wanted to
Oh.
potentially say something or like talk about what he had mentioned. So he's here. So maybe do you want to?
He said a lot of great things, but there was like one thing that really stuck out. Okay. I'll zoom in on this one thing first. But we were talking about, as all of these conversations get to, like left versus right, who's more worser, like for our culture
Yeah,
and stuff.
more words.
And yeah, and they'll point to different functions of like the Trump administration, right? Or different things that someone powerful, in the government says. And then when we talk about the cultural and political issues on the left, they say like, well, this is just, you're just talking about the crazy people who bullied you,
Yeah.
or you're just talking about the crazy people on Twitter. Look at the Democrats. They're all moderate and normal. None of them believe this. Like, point me to an elected official who's saying or doing this.
Yeah.
And I do think
I'm
I
listening.
tried
I'll be
to
right back.
pass that. Yeah. But I'm going to just read Zero Fucks. I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to read what Zero Fucks said to me in the DMs. Because again, I think he said he hasn't released it. Is that okay if I release it? This is your secret stuff. You gave me 100, so I'm assuming it's okay. Okay. So he said, this is how I see the left justifying their actions while being able to point at the right's wrongdoings. Their entire method is decentralized, as opposed to the right, which tends to centralize power. Even in my conversation with Wick today, he said, but which politicians on the left do X, Y, Z, which completely ignores the cultural aspect. For example, Trump being happy with death. Meanwhile, these issues are more widespread on the left, but almost nobody on the left doing it has a name to call them out on it. But each one is a straw on the camel's back. The diffusion of responsibility means that they all get to walk free, even if in totality they have a greater overall effect. This is also why I disagree with Wick's recent statement that Trump is the greatest threat to free speech in a generation, and it's not even close. It grants this view the ability to point to him being in power and using that power to chill free speech, which fine, I could grant that, but it's a centralized use of power. On the left, stuff like wokeness was a side channel method to chill speech, putting people in fear of getting fired via cancellations. Or in extreme cases, vandalizing businesses that didn't put up a please don't hurt me Black Lives Matter sign in their windows. But because they lacked government power, it's easy to write them off. Which everyone just like soak in that for a second. I thought that was quite profound. And then I said, my response to him was, of course, the problem is that even when I've tried to make that point less eloquently, they just deny that the behavior is widespread on the left. So that was, I think, like the point of tension. I think, again, similar to like what you do for me, Kay, where you like explain something in much clearer words. That was like what Zero Fucks provided for me last night. And I will try to frame it that way, because I think that's a great way to frame it. But I imagine that what we're going to run into, the response to that is going to be, but it's not actually that widespread. That's what they already say, right? That's what they say. This is just the extreme crazy people on Twitter, right? Like even yesterday they were in like I think it was in the voice chat after the stream, but they were just like, how many of you guys even like have ever met a woke person in real life? Like I've never met someone like that. And they're being like dead serious. And I don't know, maybe where you live, like that is true. And listen, I've only ever lived on the coasts, right? I'm a coastal elite. So I am like swimming in the waters with these people more than maybe like someone in Oklahoma or Arkansas or whatever. Although I doubt that all of Wick's chat is just like in these little like red nests in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
But that is the response, is like, this is not a real problem. Most people don't believe this on the left. And I think that's just not true. And again, it's a much harder claim to prove for the points that Zero Fucks made. It's decentralized, right? So when the Republicans are doing something, you can point to something very specific and take issue with it, right? Because it's like, it doesn't matter what someone believes. Essentially, it's like, oh, what they're doing, what they're proclaiming, what they're enacting. Whereas I think liberals are in denial, essentially, about how woke they have become. Like they want to believe that there is this like clean line between the crazy leftists and like the normal liberals, but there's really not. The way I see it, most of the liberals absorbed aspects of wokeness, the framework. Most liberals do believe that you can neatly determine who's right or wrong in a situation by knowing who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed. Most liberals do believe that if you can determine, right, like who is suffering, that automatically makes them like the good party, basically. Liberals have absorbed the idea that there's an original sin of whiteness, and that deference to people of color and sexual minorities and stuff like that is the only fair way to maintain a society. Like liberals do believe that catering to people's feelings and emotions should always be prior. Like liberals do believe that when there is a clash of rights in some legal situation, that deference should be given to the more oppressed party, essentially, right? In the way they do it. And so, I don't know how to make liberal, and this is going to be a failing mission, but like I don't know how to make liberals believe that they are woke, frankly. And I know woke shouldn't be the word I'm using if I'm trying to get this message across to people who believe this, but the self-censorship, which Zero Fucks also was talking about last night. I don't think I read that out, but the self-censorship that happens even among normal people who are left of center is maybe more impactful than Brendan Carr totally, I think Brendan Carr is completely unhelpful. Basically, I don't want someone that sounds like a Trump sycophant going out there and trying to interfere with broadcasts and stuff like that. But I think it's much worse for our society, much more dangerous for our society, if a bunch of people are censoring themselves for fear of not just being fired, but for fear of upsetting someone they love, frankly, like really
Yeah.
just not wanting to hurt people. That is more dangerous than the long-term health of a free and open and cohesive society than actions that I disagree with in one administration that can be changed and can be overturned and can be reined in the next administration.
Yeah.
But liberals are not open to that for understandable reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that insofar as like that and what Wick had been saying, that like your frame was like off and you were just like over accounting for like a small section of people who like you see online or you maybe interacted with. I mean, sure, it's a possibility. Like, is it a possibility? Like in the okay, but I think I see it much more broadly, and I see strands of it, like you're saying, in many places within many people, even if they don't have complete buy-in. You know what I mean? And I definitely saw this not just with like radicals. Like these were things
Correct.
that like the entire framework of how a conversation like unfolds and the analysis that's happening within like regular groups of people and how people are understanding like power dynamics has been completely fucking perverted, and they're using a very specific lens to understand things, and I think a lot of times it's like a very incomplete view of things, you know, and that is not just a small slice of people. That is that happens so widespread, you know what I mean, that you can't see it anymore. But it's like when you see it, then you can see it. But it's
that's
like
the
when
thing.
You can't see
it is the water.
It is
the water.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, and the framing, it's become like this CBT soup that we're all swimming in. So it's like shaping how people think and shaping how people feel and shaping culture, because we're all swimming in these waters. But then when you start picking up on it, you can start seeing, I don't want to say it's like programming, but like in the way that like CBT like shows you how your thoughts and your mind and feelings are all programmed from what you're taking in.
They're all connected.
Then you can start
right,
seeing how those things are influencing the way you are making sense and perceiving the world. You know?
Yeah. And like, again, like I know it's so funny too. I know I talk about the trans stuff a lot, but it's just because it's a salient example when we're trying to talk about some of these divides and whatever. And yesterday too, I just got the TERF allegation so many times. I'm just like, if you guys think about radical fucking feminists, then you've just never, again, if I'm a TERF, then you're all fucked, but whatever, putting that aside. It's like they'll point to like all of these moderates and stuff, you know, like look how the moderates are winning, look how normal and moderate. The moderates who are winning right now on the Democratic side believe that trans women should play in women's sports. And again, like I'm not trying to like die on this hill, but that is a pretty good example of whether someone is living in reality or not, is if they can acknowledge the biological differences between men and women. And even the moderate Democrats are failing on this. Like Dev tweeted yesterday. He didn't respond to my response.
They're not failing. They're scared. They're just scared to say it.
Yeah, well, they are scared. Although, okay, you're right. Some of them are scared because some of them did come out and say it, and then they walked it back. So you're right. Some of them know this is dumb and they're scared to say it. But I'm afraid, not afraid, like fearful, but unfortunately, I believe that a lot of them do actually just believe this. They just do. And smart people can believe this, especially if you're like incentivized to not challenge it, right? If it's going to be uncomfortable to challenge it. Like, again, like they everyone points to what's her face in Virginia and in New Jersey and stuff. And it's like these people are moderate insofar as like they're not socialists, you know, but like they are quite progressive socially, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not like inherently opposed to that. I'm a fucking gay woman, right? Like I
Mhm.
want a libertarian approach to adult choices and stuff like this.
Yes.
And I want
Yeah, I think
protections
they
for my
believe it.
relationship and all of that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they believe those things when they're like, this is the lens through which we should operate in the world. This is the better like framework to use and um to function. But I think like if you pull that back and you kind of like, well, what about when we were operating within this framework before? What if you take that out and we're just like, I think they can still recognize the differences of biological reality. I don't know that they want to,
They
but
won't.
I
Well,
think it's
so therein lies the problem, right? So yeah, like even if you could get
yeah.
them to, then the social pressures kick in, and they
Mhm.
won't, right? Yeah, and I know that's like to the liberals, this is like making a mountain out of a molehill, right? And whatever. But I think it's not. Like I think these really are again, even to the extent of like they will. This is what I find a lot. The liberals, and obviously I'm painting with a broad brush here. They like to talk about just how much the Democrats are moderating. They
Mhm.
say that people have moved back from extreme positions or unpopular
Mhm.
positions, even if they don't think they're extreme, they'll call them unpopular. And yet they will still defend to the death all of the specific policies or cultural issues that we're talking about that were too extreme. Like these people still defend affirmative action
Mhm.
in universities and in hiring. These people still defend trans women playing in women's sports. These people still defend like all of these things. These people, they still well, I mean, the affirmative action things related, but so they still defend this idea that again that like Black people are particularly highly vulnerable to death, to murder by government
Mhm.
institutions. They haven't walked back any of this stuff, even if they
No.
are, and I'm not even trying to call them cynical. Like I don't necessarily think that they're like plotting like, okay, we're going to pretend that we don't care about these things, you know, and then just so we
No,
can
no, yeah.
get power and we can pull them over. I don't think it's, I maybe for some people it is that cynical, but I do think these people just like, again, they don't see the water they're swimming in. So they're like, oh yeah, you know, like someone like Soypill will be like, yeah, like I don't believe there's like 700 genders, you know, like, we're gonna move away from that. But you do believe that, you know, right, that trans women should be able to play in women's sports and that kids should have
Mhm.
access to
Yes.
gender surgeries and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
so they haven't meaningfully walked back from
Yeah.
any of this, and I think that Noah Smith. I appreciate him greatly too because he's just so obviously a liberal. He's like obviously on the left, but
Yeah.
he's just autistic enough that he like feels none of the social compulsion to not say things that are going to anger his side and whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but he made this point I think yesterday of like basically like the liberals became progressive. Liberals think that they are liberal. They think that there is some like
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
line between them and the leftists, but they're not. They have absorbed what leftism was. You know, he points back to like
Yeah.
15 years ago, you know, like the mid aughts, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
But and I'm like, yeah, I think you're fucking right. I think you're right. And that's frustrating.
But that was
Frustrating may be
always
the
the
wrong
point
word.
of yeah, but
Yes.
that's the whole entire point of radicalism, right? It is to like is to advance the most radical position so you could sway things just a little bit further. You know what I mean? It's like my extreme views afford a more moderate version of them. So like because okay, maybe we're not going to go to 100, but if we're at fucking 10, maybe we're going to end up somewhere in the middle because they're just trying to shift it. The extreme views give way to a more moderate route, but those are only moderate comparatively to the extreme. They
Yes.
might not be moderate to like what is like the world or the reality that we're the society that we're living in. You know what I mean? They can
Yeah,
still
but
swing like much further.
I think you're completely right. And even to take that one step further, even then, they won't advocate for the most extreme positions, right? Because they still see that distinction. They won't advocate for the most extreme positions, but they also won't get on board. Like, so let me give an example. It's going to be a trans example because sorry, that's all I've got. You'll have like liberals who will say that they don't think they want kids to have access to transition generally and vaguely, but they'll say like they don't want kids having like surgeries, but they will not support banning it. So then then you are okay with kids having surgeries, you know? Then they'll go on, oh, well, it's not happening, right? Or it's not happening a lot, you know? Okay, but then don't pretend that you're obviously not against this, right? Like you're not willing to advocate for it. You know that it's going to make you look crazy to say, no, I do think that we need to allow self-determination of 9-year-olds. You know that that's an unpopular position, so you won't say that, but you literally won't. You are going to defend the option being available, essentially, right? And so it's not that different. Nathaniel said something that I think really hits it on the money. He said, at this point, leftists have pushed the Dem party so far to the left on culture issues that the only thing that makes a moderate now is not being a socialist. And I think that's right.
Yeah.
And frankly, the capitalists among them are have a socialist streak in them too. Right? Like even the ones who are like not socialists and want to, I'm a liberal, I'm not a socialist. They want to they want more social services. Like they still want the state to have more control over these different things and to provide more services to people. So even then they're not as far from their socialist comrades as they would like to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know that that there's like a way to get them to see it though. Right now.
I think it has
and
to.
I don't think you can show it directly. I think you have to go from like diagonally or from the side. Like there's just not I don't think there's a direct way that doesn't make people become like defensive or reactionary,
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And, I think there's two things. Zero Fox in our conversation last night said that like these people need to they need this message repeated by different people, right? Because they're going to reject it coming from some people. First of all, repetition just helps, right? Being exposed to this idea more, you're thinking about it more, whatever. And then it needs to be from different people, different angles, right? Because they are going to just reject it coming from some people. And that's also why it's helpful if it comes from someone who they view as on their side, which I've said from the beginning. This is how I first got buy-in to changing my mind about anything was listening to the Bar Pod, to Katie Herzog and Jesse Singal. And they had credibility with me in saying the slightly edgy things like maybe gender ideology is actually regressive instead of progressive, right? But I was only willing to hear that because it was a liberal lesbian and, and a liberal Jewish guy, right? Who were safe and on my team in my mind. So I think that's true. I'm glad Zero Fox agrees with himself. And then someone said earlier in the chat, I think it might've been Nathaniel also, but and this is unfortunate, but I think this is also true. They're going to need to be purity tested out for a lot of them to realize. I mean, that's what happened to me, right?
Yes.
And even then, I worry that doesn't get everyone because not that I'm so strong and amazing, but if I didn't already have a knowledge foundation and some level of pride and whatever, I very potentially could have just succumbed to that messaging, right? Like when my BLM protests and everything suddenly turned into Zionism is racism and end Israeli apartheid protests, there are plenty of Jews who just jump in that train because they're like, oh, this is my team, is the good people, the progressive people. They're saying that this country, wow, okay, I barely know anything about this country anyway. I don't feel any connection to it, whatever. And they just jump into it. So even then, even being purity tested out, some of them will just succumb to the purity. They will just fall in line. But I do think, again, unfortunately, or maybe this is just life, like it does need to like really touch people personally. It needs to pinch them in the ass, for them to see the illiberalism, of the waters that they're swimming in.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be. It could be from that. Like that's not how it happened for me, but there has to be something that gets like uncomfortable for them. You know what I mean? But there has like something enough that like kind of sparks it. And I'm not sure what that is for most people. Oftentimes,
Right.
yes, it is like getting purity tested out or something happening to somebody close enough to you. I think I was like, I don't know, I think I was just lucky,
Right.
that that like a confluence of things happened in my life. And I'm a very naturally curious person who likes to like kind of figure shit out. So as I started, having more space and distance. Yeah.
Well, okay. You just said it right there, space and distance. I was going to ask if you think the fact that it was like during COVID played any role, because you were like, just like we were all literally more isolated. Because for me, well, yeah, no, answer.
Maybe it was COVID, but for me, I think it was like I had two very young children. And like I had pulled away from the things I had been doing prior. Like so I wasn't going out, I wasn't like seeing people as much. I had two children less than a year apart. So I was like deep in parenting, and then I have teenagers. So it was like so kind of like my world changed a lot.
Not necessarily COVID, but it was
my time
distance. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had like just more psychological and distance from people. And yeah, so I think that gave me a little bit of like different times and different like ability to think about things. And then probably COVID too. So like like the world was just changed fundamentally.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, because
and like I'm sure there's 1,000 things that went into it, but
no, it's definitely. But I was interested to pick up on what you said about like distance and space, because I think for me that does stick out as like that was definitely part of it. And not COVID specifically, because I wasn't triggered by the COVID stuff. That wasn't part of my like ideological turn, even though I look back now differently on some of the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
But like I was in graduate school. I was working on my PhD, and then COVID hit, and I had taken a leave of absence. And then again, it's like a year later, it's the summer of 2021 when my worldview starts to change, right? Again, when my like BLM protests turn into these anti-Zionist protests. But I was also away from school. And believe it or not, in my clinical psychology graduate program, everyone was extraordinarily woke. We were like really, really radical, And so just having distance from that, I know played a role in me even having the space to question some of these things, And so I really do think that like that plays a role too. And it brings me to, because I just love to shoehorn the trans stuff into this, but Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage.
Yeah.
You read it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a really good book. It's a really compelling book for anyone who's interested, but she's talking about the trans phenomenon, specifically on female to male, basically young girls basically transitioning. And she goes through case studies, essentially. That's the wrong word, but like vignettes, I don't know, of these different families that she anonymizes their names, but these are real families that went through these experiences. And there was like, for several of these families, took their kids out of their social environment. They didn't like, lock them in a room or whatever, but they literally like did some like summer nature program, or moved the whole family to a different location where there weren't going to be the same social influences. And not for all of them, but for many of them, that played a huge role, giving people some actual physical distance from their social influences can really give people the space to like to question things. Because it's also, that's the thing too, is like, and maybe I know we've talked about this, but I think it bears repeating. There's just the like social cost of like being wrong, or admitting you were wrong, or changing your mind, or going back on something. And this is heightened with the trans stuff, right? Like, especially if someone feels like, I already asked all of these people to use a new name and new pronouns. How am I I bothered them with all of this. How am I going to go back and take it back now? Right. But I think the same thing holds maybe to a lesser extent of even just holding these positions, holding these beliefs. It's like, how do I go back on this? How do I suddenly just present as a new person? And that, I think that presents a real challenge too. And this is maybe more of a women's issue. I'm sure men feel some of these same pressures, but I'm wondering how female this is. And I think this might be something where there might be some sex differences here, but that also plays into what people were saying in the chat, where it's liberal women who lead a lot of this stuff.
I'm gonna have to wrap in just a couple minutes, but I'll add one thing. It was partially the distance, and at the same time I was like working and running my own business from home, and then I started looking at like how businesses are treated, and like how people think individual companies and corporations should have to like go about things, especially on like the more like left side. And I was like, fuck right off with that. That's mine. Like, you know what I mean? And this started I started having different views on, I suppose, like a more collectivist mindset, and not that like not that I needed to worry about that at that time, but like as you're building something, you are precious about it. You know what I mean? So like certain things that hadn't been considerations for me were more like front of my mind, So
yeah.
But I have to wrap.
Okay, fine.
But it was great to talk, and hopefully we will again soon. And thank you guys all for like coming and hanging out. I know sometimes we're in the evening on the East Coast, and sometimes it is the afternoon, but it is great when you can be here with us. I am going to try to start streaming on Mondays in the morning, but we will see. But like, stay tuned. That is like, my ideal will be to do something. I would like to do morning streams or earlier in the day streams. So that is like my goal is to like set up to like start doing that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so
cool. Maybe we can, it's going to be a big content week on Wick's channel, assuming that these things go as crazy. The last one was a little subdued, but maybe we can do another stream on Friday or something if there's like stuff to talk about. Otherwise, next week. And thank you guys all for being here. It's validating to have people who who are thinking along the same lines as us, but you guys also push back in meaningful ways, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you spending your time with us. And Kay, I appreciate you for entertaining me in all of these conversations and keeping the conversations grounded too. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you coming and hanging out and talking and all of it. So I will see you, and see you later, guys. Until
Peace out.
Next time. Peace out.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.